December 8, 2024, Bashar al-Assad, president of Syria, flees Damascus, the capital of the country. As Islamist rebels seize the city, he flees for Russia, being granted asylum. Multiple groups such as the terrorist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, Ghurfat al-Amilayat al-Janobia, otherwise known as the Southern Operations Room, the Turkish-backed Syrian National Army and the American-backed Syrian Free Army, seize control of the capital, and with it the whole country of Syria. Bashar al-Assad's prime minister, Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali, remained in Damascus and managed the transfer of power from the government to the rebels, before being replaced by Mohammad al-Bashir 2 days later. The position of president was taken by one Ahmed al-Shara. Former Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali hasn't been seen publicly since, and Bashar al-Assad's asylum was contingent on his total withdrawal from media and political activities. That left the fate of the local Syrian Christians entirely in the hands of the new Syrian government, the Syrian Caretaker government. Taking control of the country, the new Syrian Caretaker government, despite being composed of Islamists, vowed to respect the Christians and other religious minorities in Syria. Unfortunately, these words have not borne fruit, and it's difficult to say whether or not the new administration will keep their word. Since the weeks following HTS taking power, numerous reports emerged of Christians being persecuted in Syria. The situation in Syria is complicated, one with many moving pieces, good and bad actors, international powers, great instability, and an unsure future. And I encourage anyone interested to do research beyond this video to understand the situation more deeply and completely. This video is going to focus solely on the persecution that Christians have experienced in the months since Bashar al-Assad's government fell. Before we go on, it's important to understand a couple of extremely important things. Firstly, Christians are not the only religious minority in Syria. They are joined by Shia Muslims, the Druze, and Alawites. While these other groups won't be the main focus of this video, it's still important to explain what they are as they will come up. First, the Shia Muslims. These are a subset of Islamic followers. Most Muslims in the world are Sunni Muslims, around 85 to 90% of the global Muslim population. The Shia are the second largest subset of Muslims, about 10 to 15% of them, or around 150 to 200 million people. The majority of Muslims, the Sunnis, believe that Abu Bakr, a close companion of their Prophet Muhammad, was the rightful successor to him, while Shia Muslims believe it passed on through family, and it should have been Ali, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law. This difference in succession belief led to distinct views on multiple issues like religious authority and practice. Then there's the Druze. They are an ethno-religious faith that originated in Ismailism, which itself is a branch of Shia Islam, and has been influenced by a diverse range of traditions, including Christianity, Gnosticism, and Zoroastrianism, among other faiths. While they originated in Shia Islam, they aren't Muslim, much like the difference between Mormonism and general Christianity. The Druze maintain Arabic language and culture as integral parts of their identity, with Arabic being their primary language. Druze religious practices are kept secret, and conversion to their religion is not permitted for outsiders. They number just about 1 million. Finally, the Alawites. They are an Arab ethno-religious group who live primarily in the Levant region in West Asia, and follow Alawism, another offshoot of Shia Islam. They also number few, only around 4.5 million followers. But the previous Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, came from an Alawite family. And due to this, many Alawites had administrative power in Assad's Syria, though the country was majority Sunni Muslim. The Assad family used their Alawite heritage as a foundation for their position to protect minority groups in Syria. The next point of importance is that Christianity was not in an ideal position under Bashar al-Assad's government either, or even before him. During Bashar al-Assad's rule, being a Christian was very difficult. In 2000, when Assad took power, Christians made up around 10% of Syria's population, or around 1,700,000 people. According to the US State Department's report from that year on international religious freedom in Syria, quote, A variety of Christian denominations make up the remaining 10% of the population. The great majority of Christians belong to the Eastern groups that have existed in the country since the earliest days of Christianity. The main Eastern groups belong to autonomous Orthodox churches, the Uniate churches, which recognize the Roman Catholic Pope, and the Independent Nestorian Church." End quote. By 2024, at the end of Assad's rule, the Christian population had diminished to 579,000, or around 2.4% of the population. A majority of the loss can be attributed to flight due to persecution or even murder. The largest Christian denomination in Syria is the Greek Orthodox Church of Antioch, followed by two Oriental Orthodox communities, the Syriac Oriental Orthodox Church and the Armenian Apostolic Church, as well as the Maronite Catholic Church, which is in communion with the Roman Catholic Church. There is also a small presence of Protestantism with a few thousand in Syria. Christians often faced violence. Church leaders were abducted on various occasions, and even now several remain missing. Christian women and young girls risked abduction, sexual harassment, and sexual violence, and Christian men faced discrimination in the workplace. Unemployed Christians had immense difficulty obtaining jobs, and employed Christians stood little chance of being promoted due to their faith. Even if they weren't on paper, Christians absolutely were second-class citizens in the society that existed during Assad's government. Former Muslims who freely chose to convert to Christianity were constantly at risk of being tracked down for honor killings, and local officials would even help in this endeavor by covertly monitoring Christian groups. Throughout Assad's rule, Christian proselytizing was restricted, and conversion of Muslims to other faiths was prohibited. Therefore, while Christianity could technically freely practice their own religion, as long as it wasn't deemed politically subversive, they weren't allowed to practice the Great Commission, and they were treated unfavorably by both governmental officials and general society. In 2023, the year before Assad's government fell, Syria was ranked the 12th hardest place to be a Christian in the world by the Christian charity and outreach organization Open Hands. However, Bashar al-Assad did maintain positive relationships with the local heads of the churches, and many hierarchs of the local churches, mainly the Eastern and Oriental Orthodox hierarchs and patriarchs, had positive interactions with Assad. While his government and the society his rule had facilitated wasn't ideal for Christians, it was significantly better than any local alternative, as the persecution they faced under Assad's rule was paltry to the discrimination they faced under other active powers in the area, like the IS, or the Islamic State. You may know them as ISIS, which used to control significant territory in Syria. An organization whose infamy precedes them, a truly demonic terror group that unleashed a campaign of mass violence against Christians. In Iraq in 2014, thousands of Christians were forced to flee as ISIS carried out crucifixions, beheadings, rapes, torture, and forced conversions to Islam. Young Christian girls as young as 3 were sold in sex slave markets in Mosul, Iraq. Churches dating back centuries were burned and destroyed, and numerous Christian towns in Syria also came under attack. In 2015, ISIS released a video showing the beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians on a Libyan beach, beheaded while praying the Lord's Prayer. Groups like these were the alternative for Christians in Syria. Returning to the beginning of the video, Bashar al-Assad had fled Syria and the Syrian Caretaker government, headed by the HTS and Ahmed al-Sharaa, came to power. The new administration's rise to power brought uncertainty to Christians. He and the HTS have claimed that they would treat minority groups, including Christians, with respect, but some Christians still were cautious. Maha Barsa, a Melkite Catholic resident of the heavily Christian neighborhood of Bab Toma in Damascus, said, quote, "We're scared. We're still scared. Things are ambiguous." She had barely left her home in the first week since the HTS had taken over. Maha and others like her were not worried based on unfounded or stereotypical assumptions. The head of HTS, Ahmed al-Sharaa, the new Syrian president, did not have a good history. He was born in Saudi Arabia and grew up in Damascus. In 2003, he became a member of Al-Qaeda, fighting for the Iraqi insurgency under the leadership of Saddam Hussein until American forces captured him in 2006. He stayed imprisoned for 5 years, and then upon release, he established the Al-Nusra Front, a Salafi jihadist organization that fought alongside Al-Qaeda against Bashar al-Assad's government. Under al-Shara's leadership, the Al-Nusra Front perpetrated a series of war crimes, suicide bombings, forced conversions to Islam, ethnic cleansing, and massacres against Syria's minority groups, including Christians. In 2016, he cut al-Nusra's ties with Al-Qaeda. Al-Shara then merged al-Nusra with other organizations to form the HTS in 2017, and served as its leader from 2017 to 2025. Since breaking with Al-Qaeda, he has sought international legitimacy by presenting a more moderate view of himself, renouncing transnational jihadism against Western nations, and focusing on governance in Syria while vowing to protect Syria's minorities. But the HTS did not have a much better track record. Throughout their short history, they had perpetrated some disgusting human rights abuses, including tortures, rapes, and other sexual violences, and killing prisoners, according to the United States Commission on International Freedom. The HTS was known to commonly seize private property like houses and land. Christians were specifically targeted through this practice. Seized properties were then used for HTS members and their families to live in, while other spaces were rented out for profit. This confiscation scheme, which includes the targeting of Christians, likely amounted to the war crime of pillage. HTS also wielded power over civilians' daily lives. In areas they controlled before they gained solid power, people were detained following comments made in private conversations on religious matters. These comments were qualified as slander and blasphemy, with the latter leading to a sentence of 1 year of imprisonment. In addition to the religious freedom violations just described that are definitively attributable to the HTS, they've also been identified as the group that likely orchestrated an attack against a Greek Orthodox church. On July 24, 2022, 2 were killed and 12 others were injured in a rocket attack during the inauguration of the Orthodox Church of St. Sophia in the town of Al-Suqaylabiyah near Hama. The explosion took place 15 meters from the families and the archbishops of Hama, who were gathered in front of the building, and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch, John X, condemned the attack, saying, quote, "Our children in Suqaylabiyah are paying the price of their faith with blood. What happened in Suqaylabiyah is a despicable and reprehensible act of terrorism." End quote. The church itself is a miniature replica of the former and future church, Hagia Sophia, in Constantinople. Many Christians in Syria are still shaken by an individual with such a radical, violent past taking power and deciding the future of Christianity in Syria, especially when considering the atrocities the HTS did commit during al-Shara's supposed de-radicalization journey. But there were Christians who were hopeful as well, like Lina Akras, parish council secretary at the St. George Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Latakia. She would say, quote, "Assad's fall happened all of a sudden. We didn't know what to expect. Thank God we received a lot of assurances, and we saw that members of the HTS committee reached out to our priest." End quote. Which reaction to the new Syrian caretaker government was more appropriate would only be found out in time. But unfortunately, it seems, so far, that caution was certainly the warranted response. There have been hundreds of reports across Syria of civilians belonging to religious minorities, including Alawites and Christians, being murdered and persecuted by HTS forces following the collapse of the Assad government.
عاد خلص ما حاجة عوي حاج يا فرد السلة بإذن الله عز وجل جيكم يا صيريا نزل المنطقة منين انت يا ولد؟ شي خري انزل يا خنزير انت ايش جايبك على الجبهة انت مرة؟ الله اكبر هاي الكلاب نسوان الله اكبر الله اكبر.
And while on the surface the new government claims to be pro-minority and a civilized administration seeking to uplift Syria after the suggested barbarism of the previous administration, behind the scenes it's a different story. According to the London Insider, dozens of videos have circulated online showing HTS members persecuting Christians, Alawites, Druze, and other religious and ethnic minorities throughout Syria. And while the HTS has instructed its fighters to stop posting videos of them persecuting these minorities, the new government has either not ordered or has been unable to control members in their militia to stop attacking these groups. Crimes committed by HTS militants against Syrian minorities since they've gained power include executions, torture, theft, and stealing homes and farmlands. There were numerous incidents of HTS militants burning Christian holiday symbols, and they have also destroyed a key Alawite shrine in the city of Aleppo and executed all of its caretaker staff. In the 8 months since the new Syrian caretaker government took power, uncertainties have arisen. Perhaps Bashar al-Assad was not the ideal leader for Christians in Syria, but the sordid past and uncertain future the government of Ahmed al-Sharab and the HTS brought with them had the potential to be much worse. There are also growing concerns that the new government seems to be taking an Islamist governing approach, and not just in violent or physical ways, but also passive societal ways. For example, on January 1st, 2025, the Minister for Education announced changes to the national curriculum via their official Facebook page. The new curriculum included changes to the way that Islam was presented in classes, as according to the new Education Minister, Nazir al-Qadri, the previous educational plans presented Quranic verses in an incorrect way. Among other changes, the phrase, defending the nation, was replaced with the phrase, defending Allah. The phrase, path to goodness, was changed to the phrase, Islamic path, and the phrase, those who have been damned and have gone astray, was changed to the phrase, Jews and Christians. The changes were denied by Education Minister Al-Qadri, who falsely announced that the only changes included the removal of content glorifying the Assad government and changing the flag used in schools from the Assad-era flag to their new revolutionary flag. Changes like these may seem small when compared to the aforementioned atrocities like mass murders or forced religious conversions, but these changes nevertheless served to worry Christians and showcase the Islamist philosophy that the new government abides by. On March 6, 2025, remaining pro-Assad insurgents launched a series of coordinated attacks on Sunni-majority areas in western Syria, fighting against the new government, causing civilian casualties during combat. In response to these attacks, fighters aligned with the Syrian caretaker government began carrying out retaliatory assaults on Alawite communities, which, as mentioned before, were a group that the Assad family was a part of and had power in the previous administration. The retaliatory violence rapidly escalated into a series of mass killings and massacres. In only 6 days, the UK-based Syrian Observation for Human Rights, or SOHR, reported that 1,614 civilians were killed by armed militias supporting the Syrian government. Christians were caught up in the violence in the Latakia governorate, where, according to the SHOR, Syrian security forces killed hundreds of civilians over the span of 2 days. During these attacks, to bring a few examples, a Christian couple in Banias, a city just outside of Latakia, was shot by Syrian caretaker forces while on a motorcycle. The man was killed and his fiancée was gravely injured. A Christian father and his son were shot on the way to Latakia. Another 4 members of one family were killed in their home in an Alawite majority neighborhood of the city. And additionally, the father of a priest was killed south of Banias. In a Damascus sermon on that Sunday on the 9th of March, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch, John X, said that many innocent Christians were also killed alongside Alawites. After the conflict sparked on the 6th of March, thousands of Alawites and Christians fled their homes, fearing for their lives. Christians in the area began to feel their fears were very warranted. One woman named Rukaida would say, quote, "The current conflict in Syria does not concern us Christians, but we are its victims. There's a feeling that no one is protecting us." End quote. Another 37-year-old named Gabriel would say, quote, "I'm not reassured about my future, and I don't dare get married or have children in this place. A decade ago I had the chance to migrate to Canada, but I gambled that the situation would improve. Today, I regret not making use of that opportunity." End quote. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara denied responsibility in March 2025 for the attacks. In his speech, al-Shara said that remnants of the former regime had no choice but to surrender immediately, as he vowed to hold accountable anyone involved in civilian bloodshed, suggesting it was solely Assad loyalists and associated foreign powers that committed the killings as a means to destabilize the Syrian state and restart civil war, while ignoring the fact that his own men and supporters perpetrated a majority of the violence against civilians. A Greek member of the European Parliament, Aphrodite Latinopoulou, would express great concern on the situation, filing a priority question with the Parliament. She would say, quote, "The recent massacres in Syria, in which 1,300 people, most of them civilians from the Alawite minority and Christians, were killed by Islamist security forces, constitute crimes against humanity and cannot go unanswered. This heinous attack against Christian minorities shows the true colors of the new government, which was formed from a group that has radical Islamist origins. While Europe stands by and watches as a passive observer, Christian communities and other minorities in Syria face an existential threat, adding to a long list of persecutions in the region. Considering the unquestionable responsibility the EU has to protect Christian minorities and combat religious persecution, can the Commission answer the following? Why has it still not firmly condemned these massacres, calling them by their real name, i.e., ethnic cleansing and genocide against Christians and Alawites? What immediate and specific measures will it take to put an end to the bloodshed and ensure the protection of the remaining Christian and Alawite communities in Syria? When will it finally acknowledge the obvious danger posed by the spread of radical Islamism in the region and take effective measures to protect European values and religious freedoms?" End quote. In response, the High Representative of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, would condemn these actions on behalf of the European Parliament, and she would call for a swift, transparent, and impartial investigation to be conducted to ensure that the perpetrators of these actions would be brought to justice. Whether or not this was achieved is unclear at this time. On the 29th of March 2025, President Ahmed al-Shara announced the formation of a new government, the Syrian Transitional Government, which would be the next provisional government to rule over Syria. Ahmed remained as the president of this new administration, but the structure of the government was reworked. New departments were created and new ministers were appointed. One of these appointed ministers, Hind Kabawat, is actually a Christian who is among 3 other ministers that belong to other minority groups. However, Hind Kabawat was seen by many as a token piece, not a genuine Christian voice for Syria. She was known to be an LGBT-friendly Christian. Along with that, it was said that she was under obedience to a sheikh, a Muslim leader, and that he made decisions for her.
And like Hind Qabawat is from Idlib. She's a Rum from Idlib. Like it does not make. We don't understand how she can put up with them. Like we know that we have a big problem with the Tahimis among our ranks. Like a lot of them used to twerk very heavily for Assad, and like okay. Most of them did it just for like economical reasons. What is she doing it for? She's from Idlib. He literally cleansed every single Christian out of Idlib. Jolani, I'm talking about Jolani here. He did not leave one single Christian living in Jisr al-Shughur, the Christian area in Idlib. So, I don't know. They just put her there so people could say, oh, look, there's a Christian in there. That's literally the only reason she exists.
Her desires and sincerity were very much a subject of doubt among Syrian Christians. Nevertheless, there was still hope that perhaps the rocky start of the government was due to the extreme circumstances of the current situation. After all, an 11-year civil war isn't exactly easy to recover from, but what would come only a month later was not expected by anyone. On June 22, 2025, the St. Elias Orthodox Church in Damascus was attacked. At least 30 people were martyred and 54 were injured when a suicide bomber attacked the church during Divine Liturgy. Children were among the victims as well. The parish was celebrating the Synaxis of All Saints of Antioch when an attacker entered the church and began shooting at the 350 people attending the Divine Liturgy. even throwing a grenade in the church. As people were being shot at, brave souls in the crowd attempted to push him out of the church, when he then detonated an explosive vest he was wearing, killing himself and many of the surrounding Christians. The explosion caused much damage, destroying glass, destroying pews, collapsing the iconostasis, scattering bodies and splattering blood on the walls, floor, and icons. One of the priests in the church reported the presence of a second gunman, while another witness saw two accomplices that fled before the attack began. Across the street, the St. Joseph's Catholic Church was also holding Mass. The priest, Father Baselios, would say, quote, "I was preaching when the shooting began. Then came the screams. Everyone instinctively dropped to the ground. The fear, it was unspeakable. We were all in shock, paralyzed by the horror." End quote. Then he was shaken while he recounted that an Orthodox Christian child who had lost family members in the attack rushed across the street to him, crying while telling the priest, "Hide me, Father. I don't want to die." The local Christians were still reeling from the event when it was determined by Syrian Transitional authorities that the attacker was associated with ISIS. In fact, it had only been half an hour after the attack when this information was released to the public, as the Ministry of Interior was reporting this at 6:51 p.m. The attack itself had only just happened around 6:30 p.m. And the Information Minister Hamza al-Mustafa condemned the attack, calling it a targeted terrorist attack. The President al-Shara pledged a full security mobilization to bring the attackers to justice. A few days later, SYRIA Ansar al-Sunnah, a terrorist group that had splintered from HTS previously due to believing the HTS was becoming too mild, claimed responsibility for the attack via their Telegram channel and identified the attacker as Mohammed Zain al-Abidin Abu Uthman. It was a little unclear who truly orchestrated the attack. However, it's important to note that both the Syrian Transitional Government and SYRIA Ansar al-Sunnah's accounts only considered one attacker, when eyewitnesses saw multiple. And the SHOR reported that another injured attacker was taken to the Al-Muchaid hospital, where it was later discovered that he was affiliated with the Syrian Ministry of Defense, which of course meant that he had ties to the Syrian Transitional Government. The situation is messy and likely will never be fully resolved and understood. On the 24th of June, a memorial service was held for 9 of the 30 victims at the Holy Cross Church in Damascus. Patriarch John X spoke at the memorial service. There, he stated that the attack was a massacre, a heinous crime, and a targeting of a fundamental component of Syria. He asserted that the Syrian Christians were not going anywhere after the attack. Addressing the president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, directly, the patriarch regretted that there were no government officials at the crime scene, other than the aforementioned Hind Kabawat, the only Christian in the government. He appealed for the government to extend a hand to the Syrian Christian population in building the new Syria. As of today, that appeal has not been answered.
Covering my face now, because if they see me, they will kill me. I'm from Syria. I live now in the city of Latakia. Please, please, please. The media is not showing you anything. The terrorists are killing everyone. Children, women, teenagers, old people. Just killing. There is more than 100 body in my... There is more than 100 body in my village. Now, even in the city, they are just taking the children and the women and kill them. I don't know what to do with my mom and my 2 sisters. Please, you gotta help us. Nobody's talking anything about it. Not the social media or the TV channels. They are all hiding the truth. Hundred of bodies are thrown in the street, in the villages, and in the city of Syria. We are not allowed to go out of the house. They just come to the houses, take the people, kill them outside of the house, and take all the phones so nobody record or do anything. Please, you gotta help us. I have 2 sisters. I have 2 sisters. I don't know what to do with them. If it's okay for me if I die, but not for my 2 sisters or my mom. One of them is a teenager. Please, you gotta help us. Nobody's talking anything about it. Most of my relative people are dead in my village. There is bodies in the street. We are afraid for the little kids. There is nobody left. Like we are being killed. All of us, all the Alawite and the Christian, they are coming just to kill people. They are still coming until now and killing people randomly. Not women or children or anything. They kill everybody. They are demons. They are not human beings. And nobody is talking anything about it. I don't know what will happen to me in the next hour. Or then,
On the week of the 13th of July, both Damascus and Suwaida city in Syria were witnesses to the precursor of another tragedy. Christians arrived to their local churches only to find leaflets that were placed on church doors calling for a jihad against Christians, urging beheadings, rape of Christian women, and plundering of Christian homes. Then, on July 23, 2025, in Suwaida city, Syria, a pastor and his family were tortured to death by forces connected to the Syrian Ministry of Defense. Pastor Khalid Mejer, a convert from the Druze religion, was killed along with at least 11 members of his family, including 6 women according to the SOHR. Some reports even put the number killed in the massacre at Pastor Mejer's home at more than 20 victims. Pastor Mejer, who led the Good Shepherd Evangelical Church in Suwaida city, was a Christian along with his wife and daughter. The rest of his relatives were Druze. He had converted after evangelical missionaries convinced him of the Christian faith, and he immediately accepted that as reality. It's also speculated that the attackers were unaware that he was Christian, but they were instead targeting Druze families, lining up with recent local massacres of Druze minorities in that week and the weeks before by the Syrian government's forces. Either way, a Christian pastor, his wife, his daughter, and his entire family were tortured and executed for no other reason besides being who they were.
أنه خلاص سامحناكم وإخوة في الوطن. ما في إخوة في الوطن، ما في إخوة في الوطن. مسألة عقيدة وولاء، البراء والولاء. ما في إخوة في الوطن. والله ما دمتم يا أيها النصارى ترفعون الصليب في دمشق، وأيها النصيرية تقوم والأقليات تقوم بفوضى في سوريا، والله لن نترككم وسنجاهد فيكم بإذن الله عز وجل. عادي 20 سنة زيادة ما في مشكلة، ما خسروا ولا شيء. ونسأل الله أن يتقبل الذين غدرتم بهم هؤلاء الشباب. نسأل الله أن يتقبل الشهداء. الله أبو أحمد جزائري يحييكم من سوريا. السلام عليكم.
It's been 8 months since the new government took over Syria, but for Christians, the change has not marked much hope. The forces in Syria have not been particularly good to Christians in modern times, whether it was the Assad administration, ISIS, the HTS, or the current Shara administration. My heart goes out to the Syrian Christians. This was truly a stronghold for Christianity. Syria and the Middle East were really where Christianity started. The ravages of Islam over the course of 1400 years have done much to shake the faiths of these people. But clearly, as we've seen time and time again, even in the most dangerous of circumstances, these Christians hold on to their faith dearly. For that, I commend them. They're truly some of the greatest Christians living in the modern day. I hope Syria can one day be a safe haven for Christians. If you would, please join me for a prayer of peace in Syria. But before we do that, one last thing. If you enjoyed this video and the others I've created, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps me create more videos like this one. And thank you to my first ever patron, David. David has actually become my first ever super member as well. Thank you very much for the support. It will help me make even better content for you guys. And now, the prayer. Lord Jesus Christ our God, Thou who art the source of life and peace in heaven and on earth, pour out the grace of thy peace on a world troubled by war and hatred, especially those suffering in Syria. Extinguish the differences and enmity between us men, and pour into the hearts of all humility, peace, and goodness. Calm the warriors and give them wisdom, and give help to the suffering, protection to the refugees and homeless, and comfort to the alienated and sorrowful. Thou hast said, Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Teach us to seek to acquire peace of heart and peace among men, for in the heart in which peace is found, there is no longer enmity, love of dominion or fear, but the consolation of thy Holy Spirit, love of God and love of our neighbors. For this we humbly pray to thee, O Christ our God, for peace among people in every country, and for the welfare of the whole world, that we may live in harmony and may work without hindrance, deeds pleasing to thee, glorifying the philanthropic love of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, now and ever and unto ages of ages. Amen.